History will judge this president's leadership with the scorn and disdain that it deserves. And this is a culmination of failure after failure of this administration. The President of the United States must make some decisions.
The President of the United States has negotiated with terrorists.
The American people don't trust the President to enforce or implement the law. Sometimes I can rib people just a little too much sometimes. You tease the ones you love.
As you might guess, President Barack Obama has taken an awful lot of heat for his handling of the Iraq situation. An article on the Newsmax website that has gained a tremendous amount of attention takes the other side of things, which basically says, don't blame Obama for Iraq. It is always a pleasure to welcome into any show that I always have the pleasure to host somebody who grew up right in my neck of the woods, certainly up there in the New York City metropolitan area from Long Island. That article, Chris Ruddy joins us. Chris, thanks for being with us today.
Ed, it's great to be on. We also share something else in common. We both live in the great state of Florida, which is tax-free, so it's another advantage. We also have a wonderful climate down here.
We got smart, didn't we? I mean, isn't that fair? I mean, this is considered to be, and many people will know, this is a suburb of Manhattan. It's a kidding, but we know that to be true. We
have covered very carefully and thoroughly on Newsmax the huge boomer exodus out of the blue states, the high-tax states, and they're not coming here just for the weather. It's wonderful living here, but because the tax climate, the government regulation climate, and that's really one of the great stories that so often just don't get picked up by the press. I mean, there's a huge exodus of millions and millions of people just picking up and leaving for states like Florida, because they're sick and tired of the taxes they have to pay in places like New York and California.
And certainly, you mentioned New York and California, the two worst. I mean, I have friends of mine right now leaving New York City in droves constantly to try and find someplace to go, and they wind up coming here. The other thing that we cover an awful lot here, of course, is politics. And when I saw your article that came out on Monday, which said, don't blame Obama for Iraq, I had to go back and read it a couple of times because it's something that we have been saying here on Midpoint for ever since we launched this show, is that there is another side to this. And it's interesting how people are finally getting into that a little bit now, that there's a lot of people to blame for this. This does not just go to one man.
Well, I think scratch the surface of the way news is presented in this country, and you find there's a lot more to the story and a lot more to the public's views and a lot more to conservative views about a lot of these issues. You know, right now we're seeing a big divergence among conservatives and military people about whether we should even get involved in Iraq. People like John McCain, who I admire deeply and respect deeply, he says we should be in there involved in some way, military way right now helping the Shia government. But you have people like General Petraeus saying that it's not our business and we shouldn't be propping up this regime right now. And I think it goes back to the Iraq War. I supported the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, as did most Americans. And I think George Bush was right in taking Saddam Hussein out. He was a threat to the international order and to American interests. But the idea that we were going to be there forever raised a real serious question. Now, Obama, to his credit, wanted to keep troops in Iraq, and the Maliki government insisted no. And we even offered as little as 3,500 troops, and Maliki said no, leave completely. And, you know, we created a sovereign state there, so we really can't dictate to them what to do. And now we're seeing the results of their decisions, their bad decisions. And the issue is we could be there for another 20 years or 2 years, but after we leave, we're still going to have to, somebody's going to have to prop them up. So it doesn't really fix the underlying problem.
I think that is part of what the American people are saying, and it doesn't make a difference what side of the aisle it comes from, Chris. They are basically saying, look, we want to find a way to keep our kids from dying, our men and our women from going overseas and being involved in wars that simply don't help us. And I think that's something that both sides of the aisle have to take into consideration, and certainly people do. We are America. We are still the greatest place for freedom in the world. We are still the place where people want to come. They want to live. They want to be a part of what we do here. But
Right.
we still have to temper what we do, and we have to make sure that our considerations and our needs are cared for first.
Well, actually, we're running out of money. The Iraq-Afghanistan wars probably cost anywhere from $2 to $3 trillion on the conservative side. You know, we're going to be paying the legacy costs of those wars for another 50 to 60 years. All those young service people that got injured, that we have to pay disabilities. There'll be other additional expenses we'll probably have to pay. And the public, we just can't afford it. So I think there was outrage in the public that here we are building highways and schools and roads, bridges in Afghanistan and Iraq, but our own infrastructure in this country is crumbling. So there's that issue. And then there's the issue about America getting involved in foreign wars all the time. You know, the perception and the problem with Obama is that the perception is he's weak. Whether that's true or not is debatable, but the perception is he's weak, and everything seems to be perception. And the weakness may be driving some of this stuff in the Middle East, which is not good for long-term interests in the United States.
You mentioned perception. A lot of that comes from the media. Let's go ahead and talk about what we're doing here at Newsmax Media right now, because certainly the mothership, Newsmax.com, has been around for many years and is tremendously respected around the country. A tremendous amount of people read it every single day. And now we have all decided to gather here, under your tutelage, of course, and many other people, and launch the Newsmax TV network, which I really believe, and I told you this the first time that you and I sat down and talked. It was an opportunity for us to do something a little bit different here, and actually, as we do on Midpoint, to question everything, which seems to be missing on a daily basis from much of the mainstream media.
Well, I think there needs to be a healthy debate on a lot of things, and I think we're already doing that. We're already contributing to the debate. And as you know, this week we launched in DirecTV and DISH networks across the country. That's 35 million U.S. cable satellite homes, 35% of the U.S. market. It's a huge launch. It's twice as big as the Fox News launch in the 90s when it rolled out into the cable satellite world. So we're really super excited about this. And I think it's a sign that we're getting so much interest from the cable operators that, that there's a demand for what we're offering. And I tell people, you know, what's the difference between Newsmax and the other cable news channels? I think there's a lot of political messaging going on in the other channels. And I think people get up in the morning and say, what do we want people to think? How do we want them to think about this issue? And at Newsmax, our producers and our meetings and editorial team gets together, and people like you, Ed, and JD, and our other anchors, Steve, we sort of say, well, what's the debate on this issue? What's the pro and con? Let's have a really healthy discussion on it. And the Iraq thing is a good example. I mean, we have Pat Buchanan on saying he opposed the war, and then we've had many others, Bill Kristol and others, saying that we really should have military action.
There really isn't a problem with asking both sides a very simple question and a very direct question, because something that I have believed for many years in the history of this planet, to learn about what's going on, learn about politics, learn about your life, learn about everything that's happening around you. You have so many sources now, you have to search them out. However, still, there are those people who seem to think it's our way or the highway when it comes down to opinions. But there is a smarter audience out there, isn't there?
Well, you know, look at the success of Fox News, which draws 3 times the traffic and viewership of the other cable networks combined. And Fox has been offering a different point of view than they're getting in most other media. And I think Fox is good for the country. But I do have a problem with only one conservative-leaning TV channel. I think the country is best served by having multiple voices, diversity of opinion. We see it on the internet. There's not only Newsmax, there's National Review, Breitbart, Drudge Report, other conservative websites that are very prominent that people go to. We're not hurt by the fact there are additional places on the web that people go for conservative opinion. And I think that the more television outlets that we have across the country that share a perspective that's independent of the mainstream media, I think would be a healthy benefit to the United States.
I think about 30, 45 seconds left, but we have to take a break here. Can you give the folks out there an idea of what is to come? Because, I mean, certainly we don't want to give away too much, but this is a growing network with a growing amount of programming and a lot of ideas that we have in mind.
Well, we're on 24/7. We're going to be increasing the amount of our primetime programming very soon. I think in the fall you'll see a really dramatic uptick in the primetime and the weekend programming. And I think we'll have more announcements of more cable operators joining. And people that don't get Newsmax TV through Direct or Dish, you can just simply call your cable operator and tell them you want Newsmax TV. All of that helps us.
Well, Chris, I'll tell you, I want to thank you very much, first of all, for putting a redhead back on the air, because certainly news needs a lot more original redheads on the air, so that certainly was a great thing that you did. But I also want to, from a newsman's perspective, and I say this because we're friends, we've talked many times, it's just great to be here to be able to provide that different voice and all those different voices. We thank you very much for the opportunity, and we always, you're always welcome.
Thank you.
All right, Chris, thanks so much. Christopher Ruddy, the CEO of Newsmax Media, joining us. We tell you this frankly because we mean this. We will live by this. On this show and on the network, our mantra is to question everything because we feel that Americans want to hear both sides of a story. A unique perspective indeed. Stay with us and we'll continue right here on Midpoint.